Jayam Vishnupan Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Soul Status into Shishivani's divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, ISKCON Padmacharya Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Gauda Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, Antara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Gaur Premanande, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru Guru. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So today we're going to read it from chapter 4. The first 10 verses. So we'll do the same again. We'll start going around and start with Rina. Or one transcendental knowledge.
The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god. Vivasvan and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind. And Manu in turn instructed it to Ishvaku.
This supreme science was received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost.
Sa evayam maya tetya yoga prakta puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha chitti rahasyam hittaduttamam. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today taught by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of the science.
Arjuna said, the sun god Vishvavan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him?
The personality of Godhead said, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot. O subduer of the enemy.
Although I am unborn to my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every medium in my original transcendental form.
Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, or descendant of Bharata, and predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself.
Pritranaya sadhuram vinashaya chatushkritam dharma samshtapanarthaya sambhavam yuge yuge. To deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium.
One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna.
from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they attained transcendental love for me.
I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with a torchlight knowledge. I offer my respect for the places of society. So today we're starting chapter 4, so congratulations to everybody for arriving at chapter 4. The last time in Dublin we did continuous Bhagavad Gita, we only got as far as chapter 6, so we're doing well, we're nearly there. So yeah, it's incredible. This actual chapter contains an awful lot of information, extra information. I just want to start reading a little bit because I don't want to read too much, but just even the purport from the first part, you can follow it. It's chapter 4, text 1 in the purport, and I'll just read a little bit from it because you can stop here anywhere and you'll see some amazing explanations from Prabhupada. Now, herein we find the history of the Bhagavad Gita traced from a remote time when it was delivered to the royal order of all planets, beginning from the sun planet. The kings of all planets are especially meant for the protection of the inhabitants, and therefore the royal order should understand the science of Bhagavad Gita in order to be able to rule the citizens and protect them from material bondage to lust. Human life is meant for cultivation of spiritual knowledge in eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the executive heads of all states and all planets are obliged to impart this lesson to the citizens by education, culture, and devotion. In other words, the executive heads of all states are intended to spread the science of Krishna consciousness so that the people may take advantage of this great science and pursue a successful path utilizing the opportunity of the human form of life. Yeah. What really strikes me about that particular part is that the executive head had a very responsible position, and that the executive head knew exactly what he was meant to do. He's meant to, he's actually meant to be in knowledge. He's there for a specific reason, or she's there, so as to impart knowledge, basically, of the nature of the soul. It's not easy for us just to come into this world and be all cognizant of whatever's going on. It's it is a learning process. I mean, the soul, it enters the body at a particular time, but it enters into a specific body, dictated by the by karmic laws, and which we have subtly created. I was listening to a lecture today, and it explained how thought is actually, it's almost a creation. Like a thought is actually creating things, and if you can bring thoughts, if you can control your thoughts, then you can actually control what you create, and then it gets more powerful because thoughts then get into patterns and then habits, and if you can control your thoughts, and your habits, then you can start to practice bhakti yoga in that way as well, because the way in which to live is it's quite clearly presented in Bhagavad Gita, and that way it means that you have knowledge how to deal with the modes of nature, how the modes of nature are affecting things, so that you can distinguish between you and what's happening to you in that sense, and then as well as that, you can actually learn how to create your future. difficulty, and I'm going to refer to that conversation we had earlier just about how practice and that you make gradual improvement and things, and that but you have to go through a pain barrier as well. We say that the Krishna consciousness is happy, chant to be happy, we say. You know, that's to get everybody in the door. Then we tell them the real story. No, I'm only joking. That it is happy, but we actually do have to also work once we start chanting. And there are many ways that occurs, but the most important way is controlling the mind and the senses. And that's why we do practical devotion service as well. You know, we clean the temple, we make garlands. You know, there's so many different practical services in the temple and in your home, in your work. Think of Krishna. Think of Krishna always. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost in me. So can you imagine that you're actually aware of Krishna all the time? And then you see Krishna in all other living entities. You know, that's another vision. What's that one now? It's 518, about the yogi who sees
all in me and
yeah.
me in everything.
Yeah, I get it actually, because I just can't think of it at the moment. It's quite an interesting verse, but these are all the Vijja Vinaya Sampane, Brahmani Gavi Hastani, Suni Chaiva Svapakacha, Pandita Samadarshana. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater outcast. So that's the kind of the vision of seeing everybody not according to, oh, this person is the CEO of this business, and that person is a great pop star, film star, and oh, that person over there is no. But when you get into real vision, you actually see you see Krishna in everybody, and you see Krishna everywhere. You know, in every atom, as it's said. But the important thing is that we're not always on that platform. It's not that even that often. From me anyway, it's not very often when I'm on that platform. But what I do personally aspire for is that I aspire to listen to the scriptures as often as I can, because what that does for me, it gives me a sense of steadiness, of happiness, of peace. That I'm kind of dictated to by that's not maybe the right word, but by the sound vibration, you know, of the Shabdam of Brahman. Because like, how else, if I started to talk to people here who hadn't any kind of experience of Bhagavad Gita and start talking about the kings of all the planets are especially meant for the protection of the inhabitants, beginning from the sun planet, you know, people are not going to be tuned in that there's a king in the sun planet, or that there is even any beings on the sun planet. They don't even accept that there's other living entities anywhere. Whereas we're talking about then, in the next few verses, it's explaining about it's for thousands of years, like millions of years, billions of years. So there's no other comparative scripture in that way. But actually, the more you hear about the scripture, the more sense it makes, you know. And it actually it all fits together extremely well, and then the soul actually starts to resonate with what's being spoken, because the truth actually resonates in the soul and becomes part of that, you know, and actually hears and gets knowledge. So this is very important anyway for the rulers, that they were meant to impart knowledge and to help the citizens. Not only should they make sure that they have enough food, they have enough welfare, they have enough medical care, they have enough all of the material things that are needed, but they have to be cared for so that they have spiritual knowledge, so that they don't waste their lives and they keep coming back to another birth and death and birth and death. So the kings were very knowledgeable, so therefore they arranged society in such a way so that everyone could make spiritual advancement. The next verse, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo vadu sakalaneha mahata yoga brashta parantapa Supreme science was thus received through the chain of succession, and the saintly kings understood it in this way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. So Krishna came at that particular time when there was an apparent breakage in the line. There was a breakage actually. And so Krishna actually spoke Bhagavad Gita for this day and age, for Kali Yuga in specific. And it appears, Bhagavad Gita appears right in the middle of the Mahabharata, just before the war starts basically. And Krishna elaborates, and Arjuna asks questions as though he didn't actually know a lot of things, but Arjuna is asking for all people for all time. And then this again is quite an interesting occurrence. The very ancient science of the relationship, this is verse 3, with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and therefore can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. So there's a couple of words: transcendental mystery of science. Science is that science not very clear cut as formula. It's all meant to happen. Of course, we won't mention. I can't mention it. I can't think of it. That when you look at something and it changes the actual sign. What is it?
I don't see the picture inside of picture. This kind of.
No, it's what it is that when people are trying to use scientific knowledge, but they find that when you observe it, the observation changes the actual thing that you're meant to observe, and therefore you can't actually be objectively scientific about things. They find but it's a specific thing. So, but this is a different science basically. This is the science of the self and the science of the soul. And the way that we learn this science is that we actually become friendly with Krishna. Therefore we have to get to know Krishna and get to know that Krishna exists. We don't know Krishna maybe straight away. Maybe, I'm speaking for myself here. I'm sure I have some other people in the room here won't relate exactly what I'm saying. But I was reading today that people are very lonely actually today in society, and one of the reasons is given is that people don't spend as much time with each other anymore. And there was some scientific survey which explained that in order for persons to make a friend, it takes something like 90, 120, 200 hours of constant association, and of actual, not just watching the TV or texting on the phone or whatever, but actually with each other. It's not something that people do a lot, but that was done all the time previously. Well, I'm imagining it was more than it is now. But then to make a very good friend, it takes double that amount of time, which is quite amazing as well. So this is something which is quite interesting. So we're trying to make our friendship with Krishna. So we have to spend time with Krishna to do that. And we want to become a very good friend with Krishna, because there's all different gradations of friendship with Krishna, as we know as servitorship. There is actually friendship in being Krishna's parent, Vatsalya, servant, and then Krishna, and then even more intimate is in Madhurya, which is a very intimate relationship with Krishna. And that's what we study here. We're studying Lord Chaitanya, who brought the highest level of Madhurya worship. And it's not that we can jump onto that, but it's like it's something which takes a gradual process. But that's what we're about, and therefore we get to understand. We can see the picture of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Panchatattva, and underneath we have Radha and Krishna. Normally Radha and Krishna are above, but because they're on the first tier, which are all the avatar, Krishna Shakti, like this. That's how we have on this altar, and then the Jiva Tattva is underneath that. But in fact, we have Govinda Dweep, where Radha and Krishna is worshipped in its in the highest form. And that's so that we all get accustomed to understanding what our relationship is with Krishna. But when we do that, then we also get to understand who are the great devotees. Like when I went over to Mayapur this year, you have the Astashakis, and there's the 4 on the left and the 4 on the right, and you get to know all the people. You get to know of them, and then as we progress in spiritual life, we actually start to enter, into a sense you enter into understanding about the intimacy of those relationships, and you'll find that a person is actually to go on the altar is normally you have to have second initiation, because you're dealing very closely with Krishna. You're combing Radha's hair, you're putting earrings on, and you're putting necklace on, and all of those type of things, and that is that's a very intimate situation actually in that way. Or Krishna, you're dressing Krishna, you're putting his turban on, you're putting his new different necklaces and everything, and it's like and also you have to be showered, you have to not eat anything, you have to be very, very, the word is puka, when you're going on the altar. And then there's prayers that you have to say before you go on the altar, because there is a possibility you may commit some offense on the altar as well, because of taking things a little bit like, this is just simple things, but actually, so there is that possibility there. We're supposed to also have studied the Nectar of Devotion, and it's given the 64 different offences that you can commit. Woo! Prabhupada at the start when he said, if I told you all this, you'd faint, So it's only very gradually he revealed all the different things, because Prabhupada's main thing was that you have to love Krishna, and that's the most important thing. And he highlighted the chanting of the holy name, this is the most important. But he also highlighted the deity worship, because Prabhupada said they're on two legs, there's like a train track, there's 2 rails. There's the practicing and giving it to others, which is Bhagavad Vidhi, and then there's Pancharatrika Vidhi, which is the deity worship, So deity worship is considered to be a great way to become intimate with Krishna, to get to know Krishna. Do you know what I mean? It's a way in which you actually develop that, and it can be very simple even. Like for instance, you can give him some water to Krishna, in the morning time or whatever. Like it doesn't have to be a very elaborate sort of system, and so yeah, it's a very enlivening process actually, and I'm sure you were all saw Maha Mantra, how she was very, very engaged, and every day she wakes us very early in the morning, and she does all the different the worship that goes on there. It's definitely something to aspire towards, this is what we're doing. This is Panchatattva has been very merciful to appear, because normally it used to be that we just had a picture, that was the standard. You had a picture of Gauratai, and you decorate a picture and so on. But we've been very fortunate to have Panchatattva, and it's giving us a great opportunity to serve, ultimately in the future we can start to gradually raise the standard, so we start to get a little bit towards that, the beginning stages of worship in all of it. So there are all the different relationships that we have with Krishna, in that sense, that the more we get to know Krishna, and that's what it said here in the verse, that because you're my devotee as well as my friend, and therefore because you're that, then you can understand the transcendental mysteries of the science. So there's a little qualification there, shall we say. Then Arjuna says, the sun god Vivishvan, this is text 4, is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? So Krishna is saying, this is quite a mystery, because Vivishvan has lived for millions of years before, And then Krishna's with Arjuna, and then he just tells Arjuna, yeah, well, I told this to Bhishma, you know. And so Arjuna is kind of a little bit caught on that one, but it's said he's not really, he's only doing it so that we can understand, you know. And then Krishna gives the punchline in text 5. Personality of Godhead said, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. Another, here in the, there's 2 verses from the Brahma Samhita. Has anybody ever heard of Brahma Samhita?
Yeah.
Brahma Samhita? It's Lord Chaitanya found the Brahma Samhita in when he was traveling in India, and I think he found it in a temple, Dina. Did he?
Yeah.
Yeah. You probably even visited that temple. I'm sure there's picture of us. No. Okay.
Sri Rangam or one of his temples.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Sri Rangam.
Right. But it was only the 5th chapter that was discovered, actually.
Yeah.
But the 5th chapter is like
100 verses.
everything is in it, you know. And I know there's some devotees who study the Bhaktisiddhanta did an amazing translation of it, as translated by the BBT, and it's, you know, it gives incredible translations. But anyway, I'm just going to read some of them just very quickly. Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadam, Ananta Rupam, Adyam Purana Purushanabhyogamacham. It just says, I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, who is the original person, absolute, infallible. It's quite expansive, actually. You can read it yourself, I think. If you get time, read that one. And the next one, he says, Ramadi Murtishu Niyaman Tishta. Basically, it's saying that Krishna is incarnating at different times, all the time. He keeps on incarnating. So, there's so many ways in which he allows us to relate with him, you know. And there's different planets as well, whereby Krishna appears as Lord Nrsimhadev. I wonder which one there are these days. I'm sure he goes to many of them, because he can expand, you know. He's on many places, because he's always with Krishna. And so, you know, so these are talking about Krishna's forms. One very beautiful verse from the Brahma Samhita is Pramanjana Churita Bhakti Valochanena. Oh my God. Samta Satai Vidayoshita Vilokayanti. Shama Sundram Chinta Praman Surupam Govinda Mani Purusham Tamaham Vajami. It means that you can actually see Krishna if your eyes are trained with the quality of love, or the pulp of love. You know, you can't see Krishna otherwise, you know, because he's not, you know, he's not material. You can't really use this material equipment on it to see him. But if your eyes and your whole heart is filled with love, then you can. That's the only way you can see him, actually, in his form as Govinda. And once you do see him, then you'll never go back to the material world again. So you're caught. I remember one of the first times that I got a glimpse of that, and it was 1983, and I was doing some selling up in Derry in Northern Ireland with my friend Varuna, and we used to get up every morning and go out quite early, you know, probably about 4:30 in the morning, because we didn't want to chant in the bed and breakfast that we were in, because you'd wake up everybody in the B&B. Well, we were both quite loud chanters, actually, so we decided we always went out to a forest park or something. Actually, one time, it was quite amazing. The devotees, they actually used to stay sometimes in the bed and breakfasts, and they didn't go out, you know. And then one devotee came back after about a year to the same bed and breakfast, and the lady said, I don't know, because the one thing you're not allowed to play, turn on the radio listening to the horse racing in the morning. Because the horse racing, you know, they'd be talking. You know, that's what she thought was going on.
Japa, I mean.
Yeah, the Japa, the was all chanting. She
Some
thought,
associations. Yes. Some people have funny associations.
Yeah. But yeah, no, we used to go out anyway to the forest parks, but it was quite a sad time for me because I was very ecstatic because we were doing very well, and but then I got news that my mum was very ill, so I actually had to drive all the way down to from Derry, which is about a 4-hour drive, you know, and but just as I was chanting, and I was out, and it was a moonlight night, you know, it was, you know, the moon was out full, and because it was in it was kind of in the autumn time, and the you know, it was, you could actually see, you know, from the moonlight, and in this verse I kind of started thinking about this verse where Krishna is playing his flute, you know, in the night, and suddenly I got this incredible, you know, experience of that, you know. I was only around for about a year or something in Krishna consciousness, but I always kind of, it was something that I always remembered, you know, and it had a kind of a profound effect on me. It really strengthened my faith, you know. Not, my faith wasn't too bad, like, but still, that gave it some sort of. It was quite amazing actually, and. But when I drove down, I was very lucky because I saw my mother before she passed away, and in fact I was the last member of the family to see her, and actually she just waved at me just because she was in the hospice in Harold's Cross there, and I'd been with her, and then I just kind of walked down the stairs and left, and she just kind of waved, and that was the last I seen of her, you know. So it was kind of, Krishna arranged it amazingly because she could have passed away at any time while I was away, because it wasn't sudden, but it was, you know, it was a prolonged illness. It went on for about, well, over a couple of years, and so it was very kind. So those two things always I remember together, you know, and actually because I had studied the philosophy, I wasn't, you know, I wasn't torn up or anything like that. I was quite happy, and she was quite a spiritual person. So, and you know, when she was leaving, she had a lot of the nuns around her, you know, chanting the rosaries and all of that type of thing. You know, that's what they do in the hospice. Amazing people. Like sometimes my gut like kind of goes. I get angry when I hear all the criticism from some so-called, you know, some atheist or some neoliberal criticizing these spiritual people. These spiritual people did so much for people just because they understood the science of the soul, and they prayed to the soul just as they were leaving the body, you know, and they dedicated themselves like anything, you know, for this service, you know. So I just don't accept a lot of this nonsense which is spoken about the church and all of that, you know. There was things that were wrong, but you know, I just don't I don't just row in and criticize. There's some amazing people. And yeah, but yeah, it's we have to get to know Krishna, and then this is the next verse says that although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So this is Krishna's, he's always coming to try to help us to get out of this place, you know. He's either coming himself, if you read some of the texts here, and Prabhupada, there's some eternal texts here that there is incredible nuggets of knowledge. Either he comes himself or he sends his devotee, but he comes at times when people can understand. He comes in forms that people can understand. He doesn't. It's not a sectarian spiritual system. Krishna is multifaceted. He can appear in any system that he wants, and he can give love of God to people in that whatever that system is. But the only currency that you need is your desire to have it. Your lolium is the word in Sanskrit, which means it's intense desire. If you intensely want to love Krishna, Krishna is coming to you all the time, and that's why he's saying he's coming in all different forms and multi-forms. There's many incarnations as there are waves in the ocean. So can you imagine all the waves in the ocean? That's as many incarnations of Krishna that he appears, in all these places. And it says the same thing, like as he said that I'm just teaching people how they can leave this planet, and go back to the spiritual world. And he's instructing the kings, the saintly kings, to do it in that way. And so there was a whole system that Krishna has set up. So when that system is interrupted or disturbed, that's when he appears, because he set that up with a specific reason, so that people could become spiritually enlivened. So it's been disturbed, and it's been disturbed now. We understand that in Kali Yuga it is a very difficult time. So in Kali Yuga he appears in his holy name, and that's why we always do this chanting, and it's why we're always I was going to say hopefully we'll have another kirtan in June maybe. it's so, you could say it's a no-brainer, but somehow or other we never actually take the time to do it, but Sruni keeps on, making sure it happens. So this is what we need, and this is what we want, and it is actually it's a fantastic occasion because we're so foolish, because I'm so foolish, we create sometimes enmity among ourselves. I mean, it's Kali Yuga, it's the age of quarrel, hypocrisy, blah, blah, blah. But we should always keep the congregational chanting as a sanctified place. It should never be any enmity in that situation, and anything that goes on, nothing should be there, because it is a totally sacred space. Krishna says that it's there's no safer place in the material world than in the middle of the kirtan. It's the real, because even was it Srivas Thakur at the end here? During the kirtan, Srivas Thakur, during the kirtan, what was happening? His son actually died in the middle of the kirtan, and Lord Chaitanya was dancing and dancing. He wasn't aware of it, and when it happened, all the family were going to start to weep and so on, and Srivas Thakur forbade them to. No, don't interrupt the kirtan. This is the most important thing. It couldn't be a more auspicious time to leave anyway. Mm-hmm. And so the kirtan continued and continued, and then Lord Chaitanya finished the kirtan, but he knew there was something up. Of course, he's gone. He didn't know anyway. And then he asked, and then he found out that Srivas Thakur, that his son had just died, but he didn't want to stop the kirtan, and so Lord Chaitanya felt so much love for him, and then I think there was even something else. I don't want to speculate here, but because I read this a few months ago and I can't remember exactly. I think he might have even asked him he brought the life back into him.
Well,
Go on.
I'm not sure, but it's the one that I read. It said he was still dead, but he was talking with the baby, and it said that because he died during an auspicious kirtan, that he went up to the spiritual.
Yeah. He said, "Don't interrupt me. I'm already there." Yeah, that's brilliant. So the kirtan, that's where we're making it as sacred. I mean, it's great to go out and do the Harinam on the street, because it just gives it's a matter of giving. It's great to go out and give books on the street, because it's like the only or give some transcendental literature. It's like it's the only thing that we can kind of do to as a sign of compassion. We don't even know necessarily, we don't maybe have that compassion ourselves, but we can actually start to experience the compassion when we do it, you know. But we're so fortunate here that we're also, we can have the kirtan here, and we can invite people to come in here, so it's like, you know, it's also the same, you know. So it's very compassionate to have these this kirtan that goes on, and you know, the more that we can do it, the better it is. So the Lord says that He incarnates Himself in every millennium, and in Kali Yuga, who spread the worship creed by the Sankirtan movement, the congregational chanting of the holy names. And He predicted that the culture of Sankirtan would be broadcast all over the world, from town to town and village to village. That's in the end of. I tell you, if you get time, please do read the purports here, because they're quite amazing. Number 9, Janma Karma Chamejavam Ivam Yo Veti Tatvataha Chaktvate Hum Pranarjana Naiti Mamati Sorjana. And like this is like the key to spiritual life. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So that's it. That's the answer. Just try to do that. And my experience is that, you know, in life we'll come across different obstacles. As I said, it's Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. But it's important to just to hear about Krishna, and forget about everything else. You know, hear about Krishna and chant, and get to know Krishna, get to know the scripture, and then okay, things are going to happen, but we'll be able to move on from them. You know, we won't be so affected by them. Because things can affect. I mean, I was talking about my mom dying. You know, there's so many different things can happen in the world. We can have enmity with even the Kali Yuga is so terrible that even somebody who we're friends with, you know, we have a falling out, but we never talk to them, or you know, so many things can happen. But we build up a huge stock of hearing and chanting and devotion to Krishna, and you know, we also then we associate with people who are on that platform as well, you know, and then those friendships are very powerful. We'll rely on each other. I remember this great Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He was a wonderful devotee. He was very practical as well. He said that you should make your friendships very strong, because the likelihood is that the people that you're with in your community, they'll be the people that you will be with when you're leaving your body, and you'll want them to be helping you at that point as well, you know. So it was very practical, you know. But at the same time, he was very, very loving. And that's something which I have to say I really, really value, and I notice. It said that sometimes you don't remember what people said to you, but you remember how they made you feel, you know. And I only had very small association. I did travel all over the world, only very small association. But just in a couple of instances, he made me feel like the most important person ever. I still am astounded by it, you know, and I was many years in the movement, and there's some amazing devotees, but it's just, I want to highlight that particular situation. And he was so caring, and I give you an example even of how caring he was. And this is something we aspire towards. There was one disciple of his, a good lad, but he found it very difficult to get on sometimes with people, you know. And he was living in Ishrat. Ishrat is already isolated, right? But then he didn't get on with the devotees in Ishrat, so he moved 15 miles from Ishrat, you know. But Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj is a world preacher. He'd be going to 20 different countries a year, you know, to all different places. He took the time and went and stayed with that person for 2 weeks, you know, only with that one person who's, you know, because he was his devotee, you know, his disciple, and that person wasn't he's a nice man though, I'm not knocking him, but he found it difficult to get on sometimes, and he created a few difficulties here and there, and, you know, nice person, I'm not knocking him at all, but you know, you'd imagine he'd want to be with some of the, you know, the so-called great saintly persons, or, you know, or disciples who were doing so many good things. No, he went and stayed with him for 2 weeks on his patch of land or whatever he had. And it was an extraordinary, and I'd also like to say something else, like at the, when Bhakti Tirtha left his body in 2005, another extremely busy devotee, but who, and I want to say this in all honesty, so, and I'm not trying to promote any particular personality here, but Radhanath Swami was a very busy devotee in the whole of ISKCON, and he was being, like, he talks in the Parliament now, you know, so many people wanted him to come to their particular centres. Bhakti Tirtha, because he was leaving his body, he asked him to stay with him for the last weeks of his life. And Radhanath Swami cancelled all his appointments, and he had places around the world that they were all waiting for him to come, just so that he could be with this devotee, you know, with Bhakti Tirtha. And he went through hours and hours and hours and hours, you know, and he'd be with them all day. And one of the most amazing things, which happened very close to the end, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was, you know, he basically couldn't move, but he was still able to communicate. And one of these things he said, it doesn't get any better than this. You know, he was in a state of pain and so on, but because his consciousness was fixed, he was able to relate with his friend, you know, his intimate friend, and he stayed with him all throughout to the very end until he left his body, and then until you know, several days afterwards. So, isn't that amazing though? That only occurred to me now, that Bhakti Tirtha was prepared to go out of his way for this devotee and spend all that time with him, even in this busy schedule. And then at the point of his death, his great friend was ready to spend the last 7 weeks with him, you know, and didn't move, and it was in Gita language. So it's quite interesting though, that, you know, we try to develop these are the most important relationships. It's said that it's as important as chanting as developing these relationships with the devotees. And that these devotees can give us Krishna as well, because they're impact. Because Krishna's there. Krishna. I'll even use a Krishna, not even, but I'll use the Christian terminology. When a few people are gathered in my name, this is what Christ would say, then I am there among them. So Christ was there. So Krishna is coming as well in these friendships. Krishna is there because he's with these devotees. And by Bhakti Tirtha, actually, he allowed his whole passing away to be broadcast live, because he wanted devotees to see it, you know. He wanted them to see this as well, just so they're under no illusion, you know. But the 10th verse, the last verse, I'll just briefly touch on, because this is also another one of these amazing verses. Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. The word that the Sanskrit word which really makes sense to me here, or really helps a lot here, is the word bahu, where Krishna says, which one is it?
Bahavo.
Yeah, Bahavo, yeah. Is that where it is? I can't even see.
Many. Bahava, many.
Oh yeah, Bahava, many, yes. So it kind of opens up the door a little bit, you know. There's many people have done it, you know, so Krishna's giving us some encouragement here, you know. Because he also uses Bahu in another sense later on, but this, I just spotted this now, that Krishna says, you know, Krishna says, you just have to know the transcendental nature of my sights, and you don't have to take birth again. He's given us assurance. But then he says, Many people in the past have that's happened to. So, so maybe me as well, you know. we kind of get some encouragement from that, you know. But initially, though, I would highlight those things: being freed from attachment, fear, and anger. Or asked a question about it was in one of the verses in the previous about lust in the previous chapter, and how that's not just sexual lust; it's actual, you know, wanting everything. And basically, but the most beautiful part of that is that actually transformed means love of God. That's the original love for Krishna. So the stakes are kind of high, you know. What we're aiming for is quite amazing, you know. We're not going for something small here. So just to get back to the practicing team, you know, the more that we can concentrate on our japa in the morning time, the more that we can, even if our mind is telling us so many different things, and even when things which are difficult in our life will come at us, the tendency for us then is to say, I couldn't be bothered, it's too much, why is it all happening anyway, you know, turn on the TV, what's the latest, what's happening in this, you know. That's the natural tendency, but, you know, if on those, I'm just saying it for my benefit, that if at times things like that do happen, stay in there, stick at it, you know, these are the times when you can make the most advancement, you know. Again, those examples you were given, Dina, about breaking the muscle fiber, you know, so that the body comes back and creates stronger fiber. Then, you know, it's a bit like that. In you know, if we can develop that we can develop that kind of intensity, and not that it's artificial or anything, because that's another thing Krishna says. You know, following the rules and regulations just for the sake of it, or not following the rules and regulations. You know, we have to be balanced as well. But all I'm saying on a very practical level, that if sometimes we do have to perform the austerity, and that's what's said to be the austerity of this age. The austerity of this age is the chanting of the Maha Mantra, and that means that we have to chant the Hare Krishna mantra attentively, and the difficulty of that is the mind. So, but the more we do, the better we become. So the practice starts right here, right now. Okay. No, I'll stop. Is there any? I can maybe take one. Is there any question? No, that's fine.
Just a comment about this. It's the same principle which applies to anything regarding whatever strength training, or you have to bring yourself out from comfort zone. Only then the progress happens. You know, to break the muscle fiber, you cannot stay in comfort zone because it's not comfortable to do it. You have to go out of comfort zone. Then as somebody says, life starts after the comfort zone. Real life starts. That's what this is. Also true for Krishna consciousness.
I also wanted to mention one story about, there were Russian devotees in Vrindavan, and there were animals. When they were chanting, you know, animals, they come and sit around, dogs or other animals. And it's interesting, they understand, they didn't even touch prasadam when they put it there. And I was impressed by this. But then I had my experience. I was in a village, staying with my mom, and I used to go to chant in the morning, didn't want them to, you know, be scared of everything, so I found my sacred place. There was a small lake there, and I was chanting and enjoying the nature as well. And then the frog came, and they're everywhere, but you know, they come and go, and this frog, she came, she sat down, and she was on the leaf, and I was there for 1 hour, and she was there with me, non-stop, honestly, looking into my eyes. It was so amazing. I keep, you know, I kept chanting. I didn't watch her all the time, but they're like, oh, she's still there. Oh, she's still there. And as soon as I finished, I was just enjoying the nature and shrunk. Yeah, maybe I opened the dirty spiritual world to the Freud.
Definitely.
There was another remarkable story what I remember. I'm doing the course, it's in Russian, I'm doing 2 of them actually, I started 2 years ago, and it's amazing, again, I just found so many new devotees and stories, and oh my god, this life experience would happen to people. And there was a woman who was a devotee, and she used to dress Nityananda, Chaitanya, they had the same Panchatattva there. And she was an amazing devotee, and she loved them. But you know, as you said today, sometimes we take it for granted, we kind of keep forgetting their gods. And it happened to be, she had a needle, and she just, it happened to be, she just did a couple of, tick when she was doing like the dress, fixing the dress on Nityananda. Okay. And then in a week time, one devotee came to talk to her. And he said, you know what, I saw the dream. Nityananda said that he doesn't feel good because of this. And she was like so shy, and really she had a regret she did, but you see, he just came into the dream to let her know. It's so merciful, and it's again and again they just, you understand, like it's a presence there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's some amazing stories. I'm part of a little conference on the WhatsApp about the Euro Pajari services or something. Some of the stories that come up on that are quite amazing. But must try to get some more devotees in on that, so they can hear about, because these are actually the Pajaris, like you're saying, and they speak about things like that, and they speak about practical things as well. But it's another world actually, and especially even I don't need a small amount of daily worship myself, but like you're just there, and the deities are there. They're alive. That's they're alive, like, and you're kind of looking after them, and it's incredible process that's been set up, and it's been going on for millions of years.
And we remember that one, but when you hear something like this, the story, like, it's again, my heart was like melting there, like, oh my god, this is it. And I was in Belarus, I was chanting there as well. And then I saw a dream, and my father was chanting in my dream. It was such an amazing feeling, to hear my father chanting Hare Krishna mantra, and he didn't remember all the words, and I kept helping him. And you know what, after the dream I felt such a strong connection with my father. I'm not sure if he is ever going to chant, but in the dream, seeing him chanting, that was something. And again, Krishna is just gives something extra.
Things are going on.
Last winter I was in Mayapur taking Bhagavad course for 3 cantos of Bhagavatam, and then one of our teachers, he in the middle of the class started to tell the story that was written in Bhagavad, and he told how some lady in India somewhere, had this Lord Jagannath or Baladev Super Lord Jagannath, I guess, appeared in a dream. Why they're not giving me mango? Why don't they give me mangoes? I want mangoes. Can you tell them to give me mangoes? Pujaris.
Yeah.
And then okay, there's a strange dream, but it kept coming back. The Lord Jagannath kept coming back in my dream, again complaining, they don't give me mangoes. and she in the dream somehow inquired, so which temple, where they don't give you mangoes? and he said, in Estonia. Yeah. I was in the class. I didn't know about it. The teacher told me, in Tallinn temple, where I joined. Yeah, and then they have 2 altars for Nitya Jagannath Baladev Super. And then and somehow or other, the lady contacted our temple and told her everything.
Krishna was mad.
Yeah.
Get that?
Very inconceivable how Krishna can, appear in anyone's dream, in any part of the world to complain. So, this lady had no connection with our temple, so pretty far out. And so I'm gonna soon, hopefully, see it in Jagannath. I'm going there at the end of May. So, just one of these unlimited stories of how deity worship, so personal, so.
It's so often always in the scriptures. Well, in, like Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's 2 major instances where Lord Chaitanya speaks about the deities and the interaction among the devotees. The Shiva Gopinath, and the other one was the 2 pilgrims, the Shakshi Gopal as well. So that's something we'll get into the night, but we'll come across them again sometimes. Great. Johnny, thanks for this. She wanted Bible Gita Key, Johnny.